Hey, Amie.
Yeah, Juan.
Give me that beat.
It's Baseball Shangri-La with Amie Cuevas and Juan Ramirez.
What's up, party people? She is Amie Cuevas. I am Juan Ramirez. You are listening or watching Baseball Shangri-La. If you are listening to us on the audio portion of the show, please make sure you're subscribed to the podcast, rate us, write us a review, help spread the word about the show. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. Hit that notification button, give us a thumbs up, leave us comments. We love engaging with you. And most importantly, make sure you're following us on social media on X at BB Shangri-La, on Instagram, YouTube, and Bluesky at Baseball Shangri-La. Okay, just some house. I was going to say house cleaning business. What
Housekeeping?
housekeeping is that? What housekeeping? Housekeeping?
You want me fluff pillow?
There you go. Exactly. So I told you, I know some of you saw us on social media. We were at the Dodger game and we were like, I'm back. The whole plan was for me to be in studio this week. Well, I'm hoping what it is allergies and
We're
not
protecting the world from Juan.
exactly. We are protecting the world. So, in the interest, we've made an executive decision and we're back in remote. So, once again, I'm hoping that we're not going to have what we had last week. My apologies. I am very thankful of everybody's patience, but I am no longer in Afghanistan. So, hopefully, we won't have those connection issues that we had last week. But really, and this is also preemptive, if I start having a coughing attack, as I'm talking, it's because I'm dealing with something. But that being said, Amy, ¿cómo estás?
Hi, I got to see Juan at the stadium last week.
That's
Miracles
right.
never cease.
Now this was planned way, way in advance. This was planned actually. Here we go. Here comes the cough.
I started it first, so this is where I'm a little bit like fever pitch, so we can bring in some of our movie whatever references. I usually have like not quite spreadsheet, but I will go at the beginning of the season, mark up my calendar, and I have not only the giveaways but the home games, and I will start doling them out because there is an exchange program through the Dodgers season ticket holder page, and so I will just start swapping tickets for the games that I'm not going to go to. So this was the World Series trophy night, that we had planned to kind of meet up with some of our baseball family, my best friend, Juan, and some of his family. And so, again, like when you plan things well in advance, sometimes people can make it, sometimes people can't. But Juan actually showed up, came back from assignment, and we got to see him before he passed off his toy or his World Series trophy to someone else.
That's right. We ended up going to the replica World Series trophy game. And you guys all know how much I love toys, but Amy got these tickets advance. I wanted to see Amy. This was actually my first Dodger game of the season, Amy. So this was a big deal for me. And so I went and, it turns out that it seems like there were two other giveaways this week that were actually bigger, and probably those were the nights to go. So I'm glad that I didn't go to those nights, because the next night, Wednesday night, was the World Series gold jersey giveaways, and I know that was a hot ticket. Which you were there, right, Amy?
I did. So I got off work and just jetted all the way over there. As I walked through the gate, I did get handed a Freddie Freeman jersey. I, of course, was looking for a kike. And as you walked in, so they have a lot of the areas roped off where you have to get to the other side so that there aren't log jams in the front of the gates. And so everybody was kind of clamored around that area, and you could hear people like, hey, do you have a Freeman? Hey, do you have a kike? So everybody was trying to change. It was actually kind of cool to like have that Dodgers community of people communicating who might not otherwise talk to each other, just go in and go to your seat. So after a couple of tries, I was able to trade my Freddie Freeman jersey for a Kike jersey and, happily go to my seat.
Now, I know that, and unless you know this, I don't think it was made public in terms of what the breakdown was. in terms of how many jerseys were Freeman, how many were Kike, how many were Edmund or Muncy. But from what you saw at the stadium, which was the player that most fans were trying to get their hands on that particular jersey?
I mean, everybody kind of has their favorite, but from what I could see, it looked like Kike and Freeman were the ones that were in demand. But you did have a lot of people who were happy that they got their Muncie, their Edmund, or I'm trying to think, their Will Smith. And so a lot of people hadn't put theirs on while they were still trying to trade. And then as you saw people start to like wear them, then you knew, okay, they've given up. They're going to their seat. They're either happy with what they got or they're resigned with it. But you could see everybody in their jerseys around the stadium that day, where normally you see like different colors peppered in based on what people are wearing. It was a little bit more uniform across the stadium that day.
I get the appeal of this giveaway. I get why they wanted to do different players, but you end up dealing with this. And now I have to hear it from my sister who went to that game, and she specifically wanted her Kike jersey, and she didn't get it. She went through the gates. She got a Tommy Edmond, but I think what pissed off my sister even more was she went to the game with her compadre, and while her compadre was going through the gate, he asked, excuse me, the security people, hey, do you have a Kike in there? And the security people, who are really big Dodger fans, asked the compadre, what number is he? And so he said he's number 8, and they got him a Kike jersey and gave it to him. And so my sister was furious because she was like, wait, if I would have known that I could have chosen which player I wanted, I would have asked for Kike. I thought it was you get what you get, and then that's that. So now my sister has given me a homework assignment that I now have to go find her a gold Kike jersey. And I was just like, thank you. I'll just put on my Indiana Jones hat and go search now for that. But
And I
it
think it depends on what gate you go through, because honestly, like what I was seeing, like they didn't ask us. You got what you got when you went in. So I mean, it's also dependent on the people who were handing them out, because Saturday was the Ice Cube bobblehead giveaway, and I had a friend who was going to that game, and she ended up going through that new line where you can do the, like, you take the picture of yourself and then you get in a little bit quicker. And she noticed as she was going through security, they were tearing down the last box. So security was actually super cool. Let her go grab her bobblehead and then come back and, get her purse and everything. But not all security guards are made equal. So it really honestly depends on who's working the gate doing the giveaway, who the security guard is letting you in. So it's just, I mean, it never hurts to ask, but I think we had asked at my gate and they were like, yeah, no go, you get what you get.
That, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know you were there this weekend, but I believe that crowd on Saturday for the Ice Cube bobblehead was the biggest crowd of the season.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Yes, what I heard was I believe it was a sellout, like the biggest sellout that they'd had. It was like 54,000. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but yeah.
And they only gave out 40,000 of those bobbleheads, correct?
Correct. Yep.
So there were 14,000 people that were super pissed that night. Is that correct?
I mean, yeah, but it's not anything that's different from any other giveaway other than that one time that they announced early that they'd give everybody a Shohei bobblehead. But that's, I mean, it's not a given. So you have to plan accordingly, unfortunately.
Yeah, so it was a big giveaway week this week at Dodger Stadium. I mean, this is not even counting the Blake Snell bobblehead that they gave out on Monday, but there were a lot of giveaways, and the people came out for them. Not only, I think people came out more for the giveaways and the fact that they were playing the show pods or in a 4-game set.
I think it was probably a little bit of mix of both, but as we know, there are all types of fans now that are hitting Dodger Stadium. So whether it's, the hardcore, the casual, the nerd fans, etc., like you're going to have a run of the, like, basically it's going to run the gamut. You might have kids who want a certain giveaway, so you're planning for that. I do have a couple shout outs because while I was there earlier in the week, I got to see you, I think your friend Tom, if I'm not mistaken. We got to see some of our baseball people, Jessica and Philip. I got to meet some of our listeners this weekend. So at the Saturday game, we got to finally meet Roland and the kiddos. So we got to meet his wife, Luce, and their kiddos were there. So also Luce, Leo, and Luke. So that's who's listening to us on the way into school. And their niece was there as well, Quinn. So it's always nice to get to meet some of our listeners. If I have stickers or any swag on me, passing that out, but just delightful. They were there, got to meet them. It was such a bummer that you weren't there to harass them.
Yeah, I look. In all interest, in all disclosure, and this is probably maybe the reason why I'm sick. My daughter had her high school graduation party this past weekend. It was that Saturday, so that's why I was not there in attendance. But Amy, you were
So
there.
you're welcome, kids.
So Amy, you were there, and I know you got to talk to Dave Roberts. So before we get into some updates, is there anything else that you want to say?
I'm just trying to think. So we did also. Bradvo was in the stadium on Saturdays from the Baseball Isn't Boring podcast, so got to see him. Um, we also, I met somebody while I was at the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. So John Stom and his wife Deborah were in the stadium on Saturday. They're kind of doing a tour of stadiums. I believe they're at the Padres game today. But it was just nice. Like it just felt like a lot of community around just getting to see people say hi and just have people be happy to have baseball. So outside of that, I know we are going to get into baseball and we're going to kind of do what we did last week. So just a little warning, we're going to focus on baseball for the first 3 quarters. We do have a couple of updates. We noticed that we did get some comments in the comments corner, so we want to address those. But again, we want to protect everybody's peace. So for now, we're just going to talk about baseball and we'll kind of shoo that stuff to the end of the episode so that we can address it, but give people a choice of what they want to listen to.
All right. Well, a pleasant good evening to you, wherever you may be. Amy, you got to talk to Dave Roberts this weekend. What updates do you have for us?
Oh my gosh. So there were a lot of moves, a lot of updates. They actually didn't trim my question out of the Sportsnet LA on whichever day that was, Saturday, Sunday. I don't remember when I asked the question, but normally, as you know, there's like 3 or 4 minutes that makes it on social media. The whole thing made it on. So you get to hear my question somewhere buried in there. So we did have a lot of moves last week. On Wednesday, we optioned Matt Sauer, who was the one, as you remember, who ate all of those innings for us recently. And we activated Emmett Sheehan so that he could make his basically his season debut. He was coming in off of the 60-day IL. Thursday, we selected Jack Little's contract. We pulled him back from Oklahoma City, and then we optioned Emmett Sheehan. So it's going to be a little bit more of that roller coaster esque type of updates day. We also transferred Tony Gonsolin to the 60-day IL with that right elbow discomfort. So just doing what we already knew what was coming. Friday, Jack Little was then optioned, and we'll get into more of his performance and what happened. But just as far as the transactions themselves, Boston Red Sox traded left-handed pitcher Zach Penrod to LA for cash considerations. And that same day on Friday, the Dodgers also transferred Roki Sasaki to the 15-day from the 15-day IL to the 60-day IL with that right shoulder impingement. And then Dave Roberts had mentioned that Luis Garcia was going to be throwing in Rancho this weekend. Tyler Glasnow was going to Oklahoma City, and he had the option to build up. He is using his full pitch mix right now. Roki, even though he did get transferred to the 60-day IL, is doing a progression. So we did see him a couple days playing catch. Blake Trinan is ramping up. He has a pen that he's going to be throwing in the next couple of days. And while Blake Snell has thrown 4 or 5 pens, Dave Roberts did say he's not close to facing hitters. He is throwing his full mix, but when pushed on it, he said he's just probably not ready yet. So that's kind of where we stand with some of the updates, and then there's probably a couple more if I missed them that we're going to get into as we kind of recap. Was there anything that you wanted to make sure we touched on before we dive into the series that we just saw?
Only the fact that when Emmett Sheehan got sent down again, how soon do you think he gets called up? Because doesn't the 10-day rule apply to Emmett Sheehan before he can get called up? Or is there another injury that's going to prevent that or will allow him to come up before those 10 days?
I'm not sure if it's 10 or it's 15. I can't remember off the top of my head. But in transferring Gonsolin into the 60-day, and then you also transferred Roki on Friday, does that allow for? Well, Roki was actually coming off the 15 days, so probably not. I mean, we probably won't see him unless, God forbid, another, or whoever you believe in forbid, another injury happens. But
Because Robert said that Sheehan's going to be here fairly soon. So I thought that was very interesting that they decided to send Sheehan back down again because I really thought, all right, he's a part of the rotation now. Because, I mean, we're going to get into it as we recap this Padres series. But I thought Emmett Sheehan looked great, this week.
they want to build him up too, though, so I think that's part of it. It's not that we're not going to see him again. It's more of a, they don't want to overdo it with him as he's just coming back. That was his first game of the season back in the bigs, so just making sure that he gets the appropriate ramp up and the appropriate rest that he might need.
All right, well, let's talk this show pod series because the Dodgers have taken 5 out of 7 so far.
Do you have your tea light or your candle lit right now while we're talking about this?
Oh, wow. You really couldn't miss the opportunity to swipe at Manny, huh?
We'll get more into that, I'm sure, when we get to what, Thursday's part of the series. But go ahead. I'm sorry, I jumped ahead.
Look, I mean, I did not have that on my bingo card that the Dodgers would take 5 out of 7 against the show pods, especially in the state that the Dodgers are in, well, in particular, their pitching staff, the state of their pitching staff to win 5 out of 7 against the show pods. Now,
Come over
I
to the cheers side, Grumpy Bear. Come on. You
But I
can.
will say that, and you're right, I did confirm the name of that teddy bear, I mean, Care Bear, excuse me, and it is Grumpy Bear. It's
Mhm.
so tender heart. I am grumpy to your tender heart. Um,
See, and I'm just mad that that set of toys doesn't have a cheer bear because that's my bear. It's got a little, it's pink, it's got a little rainbow on its tummy. Like, I'm gonna buy a different bear and put it in that set.
one of the things, though, that I thought was interesting, the fact that, again, I'm very impressed, but I think you also, to be fair, the Showpots didn't have Jackson Merrill in their lineup, and that's a big bat for the Showpots. And if you would have had Jackson Merrill in that lineup, who knows? Maybe some of those games go differently. But
Yeah, but
again,
you're playing the what if game because what if the Dodgers were healthy? Maybe they sweep them. Like that's the like what if game of we'll never know. I feel like we're burying the lead here though because Shohei made his MLB debut on Monday.
well, I mean,
As far as pitching,
there's a lot to talk about, so we're gonna get to everything. The
mhm.
reason why I say that is, yes, it looks great that the Dodgers have beaten the Show Pods 5 out of 7. But I guess my question to you then, Amy, is this: is there anything really that we have learned from this? Because by the end of the season, or if these two teams meet again in the playoffs, they may look completely different. So, big deal or no deal that they took 5 out of 7 so far against the show pods.
I
I'm
think
setting
it's
you up for your favorite response.
that's baseball. I would say see all of the above. Big deal, no deal. Like it's you learn what you can from this particular showing. But to your point, you're right. They could look very different by the end of the year. So it's a little bit of both. It's you show up and you play one game at a time, and then you also do the same thing once you get to the postseason. And if each team has made adjustments, they're going to have to be flexible when that time comes. And as we've seen, you meet the teams where they're at in that moment, and sometimes they're doing really good. They might be on a tear. Sometimes they don't have their players or the pitcher or just the way that the starting rotation lines up. You just play the game that day.
Well, let's do it. Let's talk about the unicorn. The unicorn actually pitched. Not only did he pitch once, he pitched twice this
Hmm.
week. But I know when you saw Roland on Saturday, did Roland ever say anything about the fact that I called this a couple of episodes ago? Did I not say to you, Amy, why don't the Dodgers just pitch him in a game as opposed to continuing to do these live batting practices?
I believe
Now,
he gave you credit for something, but I think I blacked out and ignored it. So, you're
wow.
gonna have to ask Roland.
Obviously, look, I, I know that he's the unicorn, but how realistic was he to go out there and just mow everyone down? I don't think that was going to happen. Obviously, I think he struggled a little bit with his control. I think what I was really impressed with the most with his outing was his velocity. I
Hmm.
did not expect him to be hitting 100 miles per hour. Now, maybe he was just amped and that was the adrenaline. Maybe he starts taking a little less off to improve his control. But I think that was a very encouraging first outing for him. And I think what we're going to see now is it's going to be really, really slow ramp up. Because the later on when he pitched against the Nationals, he only made 18 pitches in that first inning. So I know a lot of people could have made the argument let him go one more inning, let him go a second, or at least let him start that inning. If you want to pull him in the middle of the inning, okay. Amy, what did you see from Shohei? Are you okay with the way they handled him this first week of him pitching?
Yeah, because you know me, I'm a lot more cautious when it comes to this anyway. I was surprised that they came to the agreement that they were going to put him out sooner, but even with the second time he pitched, they had already agreed it was going to be one inning no matter what. So it's not like they're not. I shouldn't say they're not. I was going to double negative. They are having conversations about this stuff. They are all looped in on this, and they also realize what we've talked about before, that they are kind of setting the course for if there is another two-way player again another day, whether it's you learn from it or hey, don't do this. But I think they've already said it's going to be a slow ramp up. So for anybody who's shocked, I don't know why, because they've already announced that it's not a secret. I think with some of this stuff too is I'm very proud of you. I want to give you your flores because you are actually very positive about his outing. I saw some negativity across social media just calling out like that he doesn't have it. They think that his pitching is impacting his hitting. All kinds of stuff where I think it really falls under what you said initially, where he this was his first outing. Now he's on his second. He pitched 18 or he threw 18 pitches the second time around. There were some unfortunate things that happened, obviously that pop up, but even Rick Monday had said during the broadcast, the way that the sun was shining and the sky was clear, it was really hard to get a read on any of those balls hit either in the infield or the outfield. So it is unfortunate that they couldn't end the inning sooner, but it sounded like the plan was one inning regardless.
Look, Drink,
Whoa.
I will say this. I don't know if either or, but offensively he did look rough this week. I mean, there was a stretch there where he had struck out 6 times out of in his last 10 at bats, and he just did. I kept telling my daughter this, where I was just like, it seemed like there was a book on how to get him out. That he is just he that pitch that's low and away, he just doesn't seem to be able to lay off of that. And it seemed like everybody who was pitching to him this week knew that and kept throwing him that
You
pitch.
you mean they studied the scouting reports?
I
Shocking. I
exactly it just looked like he was striking out on the same pitch, and he was striking out a lot. Did
well
that have to
and
do with the fact that he was pitching? I don't know.
Dave Roberts said no. So we were talking about that in the scrum on Sunday. So the question did come up: would batting lead off? Do they think that's impacting anything? And Dave said that he's completely fine. They're not going to make any changes down the line. Could they potentially consider moving him down on the lineup so he has a little bit more time to get change between pitching and then batting, especially because he's leadoff? They're not seeing any signs of fatigue. They're just saying that it's hard to have any consistency when he's chasing strikes outside of the zone, and they're aware of it. He's just got to stop doing it. So it's not for lack of them knowing what he's doing. It's just, it's hard in the moment when you have a split second to make that decision. This is where I think people forget playing baseball is hard. Batting is hard. You have less than a tenth or a 2/10 of a second before the ball like leaves the pitcher's glove and hits the plate. Like it's hard. So I don't think they're saying that it's not related to him being a pitcher. It's just he's a little bit he's struggling a little bit at the plate.
Did Roberts or anybody in the organization discuss of him maybe not playing the day before he pitches? I know that's something that the Angels did when he was pitching. Now, of course, he was pitching more innings, so I don't. I had heard they discussed it on the broadcast that moving him down in the lineup on the days that he's pitching, but was there any discussion of giving him the day off? Because this is a dude that plays every day. I don't think he's taken a day off so far this year.
No, it didn't come up, but I think it's also too soon when you're pitching an inning and they already know that the ramp up is going to be slow as they progress him through whatever his throwing program is going to be in a live game. So that hasn't come up yet because it hasn't needed to come up. But
Well,
we
I
did
mean,
see. Oh, go ahead.
well, I mean, he looked better against the Nationals, but yeah, it was the Nationals. But I think that's really what you have to keep an eye on is every time he goes out there, what does he look like? What does his control look like? When are we going to see him go another inning? Because now, if he goes 2 innings and you work your way up to three, that's when you're going to have to factor in the up down. Because with him pitching just 1 inning, there's no up down there.
Well,
And
and that's the plan is to ramp him up to that up down, and we might see that in the next start.
because you saw what happened to Kershaw. There was an inning there where Kershaw was waiting for a while because of what the Dodgers offense was doing. How is Shohei going to react to that if there's an inning where he pitches the first inning, and the Dodgers are batting for a while, and now he's got to go back out there. So this is
Well,
all.
he's also going to be batting. That's where he's a little different from Kershaw because we don't have the or we have the DH now where Kershaw doesn't have to go hit for himself and then come back in. Shohei, if they're batting around like they do in some of those innings, he's going to be getting up and down. So his arm may not be as warm maybe as we would like, but he's still going to have some action whether he's going around the bases or he's just taking some swings. So it's a little bit different situation in that respect.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
And Doc got ejected in that game on Tuesday, right after. So Shohei pitched, we come back, and then of course the Padres series is going to be contentious. Everybody was getting hit. Shohei gets hit, and then Doc gets ejected. And I think you had already gone to your seat at that point. We were still in the pavilion, and we were just like, "Oh my god!" Like
So
the
were you
chaos that
still there?
ensued. Oh yeah,
You were still there then
we
when he
were.
got ejected.
It was in the bottom of the third. Yeah.
Okay, so
And it was
I,
by our good friend, I say that sarcastically, Trip Gibson, who's the one who called that obstruction call on Muncie in, I believe it was New York.
well, yes, because I know everybody's already going to put it out there that Trip Gibson hates the Dodgers. He's got it in against the Dodgers. What I don't understand is why he was the umpire that made that ejection. It should have
Mhm.
been, in my opinion, the crew chief. I know this is going to piss off a lot of Dodger fans. Um, but I don't have a problem at all with what Mike Schilt did of the Show Pods manager. I know a lot of Dodger fans went after Schilt, they attacked Schilt, but when Tatis gets hit 3 times, that's his job. His job is to protect his player. If Shohei got hit twice, if Shohei kept it, I would expect Dave Roberts to do the same thing. I would expect Dave Roberts to be out there and be heated. And let's not forget that, well, it was after that Tuesday game that Dave Roberts blatantly came out and said they hit Shohei on purpose. Like he
But
didn't
I
mince
but I think the
words.
difference with the Trip Gibson ejection was one, yes, it I mean it really should have been up to the crew chief. Or if you think there's a problem, the third base umpire should have, hey, this is where we're at because the crew chief was a little bit shocked by that if you look at the video playback. But Schilt didn't get ejected, and they're saying it was Doc was coming out to ask a question, and it sounded like Schilt was coming out to do the same thing, maybe under like different demeanor, but still only one of the managers, at least on Tuesday, got ejected.
Right. And I know there's a big hoopla about that, but I think I think that one has an. You can't argue when the rule is when there is a warning issued like that to both teams, you can't argue. And I understand that Dave wanted an explanation as to why they were getting a warning, but there's a way if Dave would have just walked out there and just said, "Hey, can you explain this?" But Dave didn't do that. And I don't blame Dave because he was heated. Dave started yelling immediately before he got out of the dugout. And when you're an umpire, and I get it. Some of these guys are really thin skinned, and you really got to question and being like, I don't know if this is the job for you if you are that quick triggered. And if anybody knows what I'm talking about, watch the College World Series this past weekend and see some thin skinned umpires and how quick they were on the trigger with their ejections. I think the situation was getting heated. The umpires were trying to take control of the situation. They were trying to diffuse it. So when Roberts comes in hot, I think they automatically assumed on their part that he was arguing the call as opposed to getting an explanation.
But you shouldn't
Now,
make assumptions.
right, and but again, everybody knows the rules. Like you can't argue balls and strikes, right? So you can yell all you want, but the minute you go on the field, you have to be prepared to know you're going to get ejected because you cannot argue balls and strikes. It's part of the rules. Now, I think you bring up a very fair point and a fair question. Why wasn't Schilt ejected? And the explanation that was given by the umpires after the game, I thought was just complete bullshit. Where they were like, "Well, excuse me, uh, go ahead,
Oh
talk."
no, he's devolving into coughs. But that's it. You just made my point for me. Okay, he went onto the field, then you have to expect to be ejected unless your name is Mike Schilt in that case then because he didn't. And whatever I mean, it obviously came to a head because fast forward, we see Emmett Sheehan make his debut on Wednesday. This is his first time pitching after, Tommy John surgery 13 months prior. He is the 16th different starting pitcher we've seen this season. So we see that came kind of like, go the way that it went. We see Will Smith hit that walk-off home run. Everything, obviously the Dodgers are 3 games in at this point with wins. Then you get to Thursday, Yamamoto's pitching. He's got his 15th start of the year. And it's already like between the umpires and then whatever's going on between the teams. I don't know if you saw that call. There was a ball called that was like, it wasn't middle over the plate, but it was like top middle. And it was clearly a strike. So, and that was at
The
the
one that
Tatis at
cost
bat.
Yamamoto his immaculate inning.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So you've got the umpires that aren't doing anybody any favors all the way through the series. You've got the contention between the two teams. And then that just comes to a head because Dave Roberts has already been ejected once. And for whatever reason, I think you had a follow up on the Mike Schilt not getting ejected.
Well, yeah, I think part of the reason why Mike Schilt didn't get ejected is because Roberts was on the field and all the umpires went straight to the Roberts. That's when Schilt came on the field. So the umpires didn't see Schilt coming on the field. The next thing they know, because Schilt played that off, and you got to give him credit, Schilt played it off like he was like checking on a player, right? And then he was on the field, and now he's going to ask the umpire a question. So give him credit for doing that. But
I will not. And
it,
why didn't Manny get ejected when he hopped over the dugout and he's on the field yelling at people later in the game? Like if we're gonna be throwing people out, let's be consistent in throwing people out.
well, the Manny one I thought, and it was interesting because Manny came out asking, and this is a very valid point, where it's like if you've issued warnings to both people, to both teams, why wasn't that pitcher thrown out of the game automatically, like Robert Suarez was thrown out after he hit Shohei? And that's the thing that is very important to learn is even though when both teams are warned, that doesn't mean that if a player automatically gets hit, the pitcher's gone because intent is still
It's in
important.
I was just gonna say intentional. Like when I'm looking for his name because I'm missing it over here. But when Jack Little made his debut. The last thing he was trying, he couldn't find the plate. He wasn't trying to hit the players. And maybe somebody's going to argue the other side of, yes, he came in to like stick it to him. I think he was just struggling just watching some of those pitches. I think some of the ones that hit some of the Dodgers, not the Shohei ones, those ones looked intentional, but there were some other ones that it just looked like it was accidental. That's the course of the game. Some of those other ones, like I think both Shohei ones were, they did look intentional.
The Shohei ones were absolutely intentional. But again, we have to take that. Let's take out the fact that I mean, those were intentional. But if they weren't intentional, and Shohei was hit 3 or 4 times in that series, I know a lot of Dodger fans would be pissed off and being like, "Why do you guys keep hitting Shohei?" So that's why it's like, come on, guys. Tatis keeps getting hit. They have every right to be upset about that because whether it's on purpose or not, it's like, why do you keep hitting this guy? It's going to get to a point, and that's why Manny Machado said, you guys better light a candle, where look what happened to Mookie last year. Last year, that wasn't intentional, but he ended up missing time because he broke. It wasn't his wrist; it was the hand that got broke. Right when he got hit by the pitch.
Offhand, possibly, yeah. I don't remember off the top of my head, but that's the nature of the game. That is the danger. So if you're not intentionally throwing, that is the risk you take being a batter or a pitcher pitching. So even if that's the case, I still don't understand why Manny's outside of the dugout.
And because Manny's a leader, it's the same reason that Kershaw was 1 foot over the railing after Shohei got hurt. These are guys that are leaders on the team that are. I mean, look, every time. Drink, by the
But if
way.
we're throwing warnings out, let's be consistent with the warnings. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, again, I think that really applies more to managers because they can't argue those kind of calls. I haven't seen a player get tossed for something like that after a warning, unless it was a pitcher. But look, and at this point, it was getting heated. I think the umpires, and who knows, because at this point, you kind of lose the thread. What game are we talking about? Because it seemed like every single game there
Hmm.
was someone getting hit. I mean, there were 8 players that got hit in that series. And to Karos's point, when I was watching that game on Thursday, Stephen Nelson asked him, "Do you think the Padres will answer back?" And Karos said, "Not in this game, but wait until they meet again in August."
Hmm.
But sure enough, Suarez decided, no, I'm going to answer that, and he drilled Shohei.
And he got a
Uh,
3-game suspension for
so
that.
let me ask you this: what was your reaction to when Shohei pointed back at the Dodgers dugout, saying, "Stay in the dugout, don't come out"?
So I heard the broadcasters, or it was either the broadcasters or I was listening to something else, and they were talking about like this is what's wrong with baseball. Like they should be able to all run out and clear the benches, and this is where I'm going to have a different opinion potentially. I applaud what he did. I think the benches clearing to me, like sure, there it's entertaining, but it's a bunch of guys standing around posturing, and it doesn't do any good. And if somebody does throw punches or whatever, you're potentially injuring somebody who needs to be on that team who needs to perform. I think it's dumb, but that's where I'm going to be in the minority. I like what he did because we didn't need to delay the game anymore. He didn't he knew what happened. He wasn't going to get mixed up in it. He was being the bigger person. He went to first base while they were like looking at something. He even went and talked to the Padres dugout. So to me, it made sense. Like, good for him. Way to diffuse the situation because it wasn't necessary. I don't
I
think they should be throwing at each other either because even if you're throwing at Shohei or you're answering back, you are potentially injuring another player. What? Because your feelings got hurt? Like for that's the part that I don't agree with in the game.
That wave, that initial wave, I really thought he was waving at the trainer to say, "I'm fine, don't come out here." But then afterwards, everybody was saying, no, he was waving at the team to
Mhm.
not have the team come out.
I
Uh,
understood it to be the team. I didn't understand. I didn't interpret it as the trainer.
So for me, what really this is when is this ever going to end, right? Because each one is like, we got to get even, we got to get even,
This
right?
is why we don't need it in the game.
Well,
Problem
but
solved.
it's been a part of the game forever.
That's
This is
not a good enough answer. We used to have slavery, but we don't have that now. Like that's not a good
wow,
answer for
wow,
anything. No, but
wow.
that's
For our
this.
listeners at home, I'll take this one for you. Did you really just play the slavery card
I did
with
because
getting hit
because
by a pitch?
that's like that's the argument that is happening with so much stuff in the world today is I'm just so tired of the well we've always done it this way. That's not a good enough answer. So that
For
means we're
me,
never going to change anything? Like this is one of the things I'm passionate about and I'm like no, that's not a good enough answer.
this is to me policing their own. This is not only just in baseball, hockey does this as well. I
But
think there is
baseball isn't hockey.
well, well, yeah, hockey is allowed to fight. They can get
Mhm.
out their aggression that way. Now, I believe there is a way to do it. Like the first time that Shohei got hit and he took it off the thigh, that's the way you go ahead and do it. Especially if you feel like your player is getting thrown at. And, there's people out there that do that. There's so many unwritten rules in baseball, things that piss them off that they go ahead and do it. It's when they go high, and that was the mistake I think that Suarez made. When Suarez went high on Shohei, that's like, all right, dude, now you're crossing the line. You don't do that. So if you're
So
not
you
going to
so you
fight,
you condone them just throwing at each other because a team got their feelings hurt? Like if we step back and if we did this in real life, like come on.
no, I don't condone it. But if your player is constantly getting hit because they're throwing inside, the question is always like, if you don't know how to throw inside, then don't throw inside because you may end up hurting someone. So if these people keep throwing the pitch inside, how do you normally get them to stop throwing it inside? You send a message to the other team saying, all right, if you want to keep throwing inside to our guy, we're going to throw inside to your guy. And if your guy gets hurt, it's your fault because you kept going. And it's not that it's on purpose, right? Like going back to the Jack Little thing, I don't think he intended to hit Tatis on purpose, but he did go inside. And if you don't have the control, then you do run the risk where you're going to end up hurting someone like that. These could have very easily have gotten the same injury that Mookie got last year.
Right. So then a change instead of just throwing at each other because you're not solving the problem. It's not going to give Jack Little more or less control over what he's throwing if he knows when he comes out the next inning that his player got thrown out the previous inning. Then there needs to be a different rule in place where if a player doesn't have it, either to your point, then you don't throw inside anymore or you're going to get penalized or the manager pulls them. And the manager's not going to want to pull them if they're already like in our case, in the Dodgers case, where your bullpen is already depleted. But there's got to be a different answer than just all right. Well, we're just going to fight it out because that's not a solution. That's just a reaction.
But this doesn't happen all the time. But this is what policing your own is you can't tell someone don't pitch inside because it's part of the game. Pitching inside is part of the game. Like if you go back to, I mean, these guys are lucky that they weren't playing in the 60s. I mean, there was a guy, Bob Gibson, and even there was a guy on the Dodgers, Don Drysdale. Those guys weren't afraid to drill you. And so what happened between the Dodgers and the Padres, I think, is very rare. It is very rare and it's escalating. But I do think you bring up a valid point in the terms of when is this going to end? Because if they play each other in August and they're doing this again in August, it may end up with either team getting one of their players hurt, and come August, that's too close to the playoffs, and you don't. So it's like, when is enough enough? When is it okay? We made our point. That's it.
Well, it's not, but there's never going to be enough if all you're doing is escalating and it's like, I'm going to one up you, I'm going to one up you. Like, there is no end. That's why there needs to be a change in how it's handled because if you're just going to let this fester, somebody's got to be the bigger player. And right now, that's Shohei, at least in the situation that he was in, with telling everybody, no, leave it alone. But that doesn't solve the fact that it was still going back and forth throughout the duration. There has
Do
to
you
be a
think
different solution.
Shohei squashed it?
No, he just squashed that moment.
So all eyes are going to be on that August series. It'll be very interesting. The first pitcher that goes inside on either hitter, how those teams do react, because these people, I'm pretty sure these teams have it already in the back of their head. They've bookmarked this stuff. So that's going to be very interesting. So let's segue into the question that one of our listeners posed to us, Amie. Because
Well,
before we go to
are
the
we?
Nationals.
Well, I do want to bring up before we do that, just there was a change in Yamamoto's delivery. I don't know if you noticed it on Thursday. They did call it out on the radio broadcast that he was pausing before he pitched. So he would start his delivery, which paused the pitch clock, but then he would hold for a second before he actually threw the ball. And they were positing that that was to get his mechanics in line. It did also help him beat the pitch clock, but it was throwing some of the batters off initially because he was taking that long pause before he was throwing.
I know this is, I mean, and I don't know if this is something new for him. I don't know if he tried this in Japan when he was over there. I don't know how much it helped him, to tell you the truth. If you look at Yamamoto, he had that great start, and since that start, he has an ERA close to 5. So, and now you have to wonder,
Yamamoto?
yeah.
He's at 276 right now.
Well, that's because at the start of the year, his ERA was .080. His start was so good, but since then, his ERA is 4.4, 4 points. It's over 4, and that's raised his
In
overall ERA to
in what
over
time
2.
period are you calling that? Because he's at a 276 right now.
Right. 276 is his overall ERA.
Are
What
you
I am
giving are you giving a time period?
So let's say I don't hold me to this, but I want to say it was maybe since the Cleveland series that he had, and this is why that was the series also that he may had a potential hip issue. His ERA has been high since then. It
Mhm.
may have got started earlier than that. I'll check the numbers on that,
Mhm.
but he is not pitching the same way he was when he had initially started the season, and he had an ERA under 1. I mean, his
Mhm.
overall ERA is still great because it's under 3. But what I'm talking about is since the Cleveland series, he has not looked like the same pitcher. And I'm wondering if he does have a hip issue that he's working his way through, or why is he trying these new deliveries? What are his mechanics that out of whack, and that's what's contributing to his higher ERA in these last few starts?
Well, I think they're always looking at the scouting reports and trying to improve on things. So if he's noticing a trend in like what you're saying, like he hasn't been pitching the same way, it just sounds like this is the next thing on the checklist of things like, hey, let's try this and see if it works. So it was just interesting to see it because you don't really see a pitcher kind of beating the pitch clock at its own game where he was taking that long pause before he was pitching. So
I'm pretty sure if he keeps doing that and he gets success, it'll be in the rules committee next year saying
100%.
you can't do that, because Eric Karros did point out, he's like, he's found a way to work around the pitch clock, because
Mhm.
the minute he took his step back, the clock stopped.
Well, and they kept
So
showing it on the broadcast, like, they were calling it out.
he's a pitcher that I really want to just continue to keep my eye on, because clearly he's been the Dodgers' best pitcher. But again, last year he had the injury, so he was able to take some time off. He did not pitch a full season. This
Mhm.
is supposed to be the first time he's pitching a full Major League Baseball season, which he's never done before. So I am curious to see, again, is this a mechanical thing Is he injured? Is he pitching hurt? Or is this one of those things where again, he's not used to pitching this much and maybe he's tired, and because he's tired, it's affecting his mechanics. It's something to keep an eye on. But I mean, I remember at the beginning of the year, everybody was like, he's the Cy Young candidate. He doesn't look like the Cy Young winner anymore.
Okay.
So it's something to keep an eye on.
And you wanted to segue.
Well, I mean, it was because we were talking about the Show Pod series, and one of our listeners had posed a question to us. So you want to set that up?
Yeah, not just one of our listeners, but AJ Padilla, who created our theme song for us. He was curious, like what goes into a rivalry, because there's a lot of debate around, are the Padres actually the Dodgers rivals, or is it more like just the Giants? Because you hear all kinds of things around baseball. Like Max Muncy was recently on Foul Territory saying you can only have one rival. You can't have more than one. So, it's technically just your counterpart. That's his opinion. But typically when we think of rivals, we think of the Giants, but as these series with the Padres are getting more and more contentious, kind of worth looking into, is it a legit rivalry against the Dodgers? And his other question was, maybe it ties into what is a rivalry. So I looked it up, but I wanted to give you a moment to speak if you wanted to before we kind of dive a little deeper into it.
It is. I think it's a rivalry. For right now, it is a rivalry, and for the reason why I believe it is a rivalry is these teams have met in the playoffs in the last few years 3 times. The Dodgers have beaten them twice. Now, if the Show Pods hadn't beat the Dodgers in one of those playoff series, then I wouldn't say it's a rivalry, because I think in order for there to be a rivalry, there needs to be both teams need to have success. If one team is just kicking the other team's ass all the time, that to me is not a rivalry, even if they don't like each other. What you have with this is a really nice combination of, you have them 3 times have met in the playoffs. The Dodgers and the Giants just met once in the playoffs. It was a great series to watch. There was a lot of theater because the rivalry was in it. But the Dodgers and the Show Pods have met more times when it really, really counts in the playoffs than they have with the Giants. Now, on top of it, you have all this, the fact that I don't think these teams really like each other. And if you look at
What
it,
gave you that impression?
if you look at it, I believe, I want to give credit to Jeff Snyder on this. Jeff, I think, had said if you count the number of managers that the Padres have had, maybe in the last decade, Dave Roberts has started fights with maybe 40% of the Padres managers, and that
And
I,
he came from the Padres organization.
exactly. So there is a strong dislike, which I think is factored in a rivalry. I think right now that this is probably the best rivalry in Major League Baseball. I know the people in ESPN will probably say, "Well, no, it's still the Yankees and the Red Sox." The problem is the Red Sox are down right now. But back when the Red Sox were good and the Yankees were good, that was the best rivalry in baseball, because both teams and the Red Sox had beaten the Yankees. And so there was success on both sides. And I think that's important to a rivalry. Real quick before I throw it back to you, Max Muncy's comment of you can only have one rival. Yes,
Okay, Highlander, there can only be one.
there can only be one. There, yes, if there can only be one, the Giants will be the Dodgers' rival. But I don't buy that. I don't think there's only one, because let me ask you this: aren't the Yankees the Dodgers' rival? I mean, wasn't that such a big deal that the Dodgers and the Yankees were in the World Series? I think there's a rivalry between the Dodgers and the Cardinals. Is it as strong as it is against the Giants, or as the Show Pods right now? No, but
But
why?
historically, yes.
Yeah, historically, because there's so much history. There were so many matchups. Once again, in the playoffs between the Dodgers and the Cardinals. So, that, AJ, I think the Dodgers and the Padres, at least right now, is a rivalry. Not only is it a rivalry, I think it's the best rivalry in Major League Baseball.
Oh, whoa, bold statement. So I did look it up just so that we had a definition. I went to a couple different places on Google, but essentially it's two teams with a history of frequent, intense competition, often fueled by geographic proximity, shared goals, and memorable moments. These factors combine to create a sense of animosity and heightened stakes when the teams play each other, which is everything you just described. And then there was another shorter, more abbreviated definition, which is regional pride and shared history of fierce competition. So that could also go. I had jotted down a couple of notes that when the Dodgers were in New York, it was, definitely the Giants, the Yankees, and then when they moved out to the West Coast, it was typically the Giants. But yes, the Cardinals because they met so often in the postseason. But now it really is that question: do the Padres meet the requirements, or as some people still think, like, they just have little brother syndrome. And I think if you're looking at the definition on its head, like, they do check a lot of those boxes.
And some rivalries can be dormant for a while, and
Like
then they
the
win.
Cardinals, because we just don't play them as often with the balanced schedule now.
Exactly. Well, the Dodgers Yankees rivalry was dormant for a long
Mhm.
time because they didn't play each other, right?
Unless you got to the postseason.
Exactly. So I do think it's a rivalry, and there'll be a point where the rivalry with the Dodgers and the Padres isn't going to be as strong, and it'll be because of everything that you just described right now. There, one team is beating up on the other one. The one team is dominating the success. They're not meeting in the playoffs. There's nothing at stake. I, I think it ebbs and flows, but I do think that this is a rivalry, and I know there'll be people out there, there'll be fans because they just want to insult the show pods and be like, "Oh, we don't care about them." If you didn't care about them, you wouldn't be watching these games on TV. I think Major League Baseball or Fox are salivating, hoping that the Dodgers and the Padres meet again in the playoffs because look, there's a lot of people that believe, the Padres were really close to beating the Dodgers again last year, and they might have gone on a run to go to the World Series. So it's one of those things where I think it's great where both of these teams know we need to go through each other to achieve our goal. And I think that contributes to a rivalry.
Well, and like I said, if we're checking all the boxes, that first definition, I mean, it's all of those things. You've got the frequent, intense competition. They have the geographical proximity for all the people who are going to throw out Dodger Stadium South. I mean, it is Petco Park, so I know, we all make the jokes, but also shared goals, making it to the World Series, and we've definitely gotten some memorable moments. So if you're going by the definition alone, there's definitely some animosity and heightened stakes when they play each other.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to say about the show pods before we move on to the Nacionales?
I am all show potted out.
So the Nacionales, the Dodgers take 2 out of 3. So they had taken 3 out of 4 from the show pods. They take 2 out of 3 out of the Nacionales. Saturday's game was a little rough. It was really interesting watching the game on Sunday because halfway through that, I think it was the fifth inning. Eric Karros and Steven Nelson are having this conversation about letdowns. Is it natural to have a letdown? Are the Dodgers going through a letdown in that game? And it almost felt like they were already justifying that the Dodgers were going to lose that game because Soroka looked really good against the Dodgers. I mean, Soroka looked like he was just going to strike everyone out. And then that sixth inning happens, and then all of a sudden, the whole narrative changes. Before we go into that, Amy, what is your belief on letdowns? Do you think, like they were saying, letdowns are natural? You just came off of playing 10 games in a row against two rivals, the Showpods and the Giants, and now you come in and a team comes in who's under 500, who everyone says you're supposed to beat. Is it natural? to have a letdown.
A letdown in the sense of like they're just gonna
Your
lose the
performance,
game.
yeah, your performance that you're not going to perform because you're not taking it seriously because you think if I just show up, we're going to win these games.
I don't think so. I think for me it more comes down to like they're probably tired and you're not going to win every game. So sometimes the way the baseball gods or circumstances conspire, like whatever, however you look at games, like you're just gonna have an off game. They weren't able to hit Soroka. He had their number that day and they got, they started hitting, but it was a game of homers almost. I mean, if you look at kind of the back and forth, we didn't even see Pages kind of broke it open in the bottom of the fifth, but it was Pages, Smith, and Theo, and the only reason we scored was on home runs. So in lieu of being able to get people on base and not being able to get that small ball going and moving people down one base at a time, they're gonna go and try to hit it out of the park. So I don't think it was a letdown more so than you're not going to win every game. I don't think they're punting it in any respect or you know
Amy, what's it going to take to stop putting position players out there to pitch?
you're gonna have to put it in the CBA because at this point nothing's gonna change that. I mean, there's not a rule in place to change that right now. So what do you want them to do? Because I mean, unless you get a mid-season rule change, which I doubt we're not gonna see, like this is it.
What I would like them to do is use their pitchers that are designed to pitch, because what we saw on Sunday was almost the second time that this was going to happen,
You're
where you had. Go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say you're fast forwarding between like Kershaw, he's like 8 away from his 3,000. We're just
I
going to
mean,
Sunday's game.
we can talk. I mean, I don't think we have to do it chronologically. I mean, we can
Okay.
go back to Kershaw, but for me, this was the most interesting thing in the sense that we saw this against the Giants when Kike pitched. We saw it again where they had to bring in a reliever to close out that game. So my
Hmm.
question is this: why didn't you just use that reliever in the beginning of the game or in the beginning of that inning, end the game, get it over with, and let's move on? I get it that you're hoping that you don't have to use that person and you can save it, but I just feel like, what are we doing here? Like, how many are we just going to keep doing this until one day Dika does end up blowing a game that was winnable, that the Dodgers should have just, like, that's it. Let's close the door and just end it already.
I mean, I think you already answered your question in the beginning part. They are like they have a diminished bullpen. They're trying to save where they can. So if he's, as a utility player, he's not getting as many innings, I'm sure, as a regular everyday starter. This is what they can trot him out to do. And in the event that he is able to get them out or at least elicit contact, because that's the problem. They're not swinging. They're just he's throwing balls and they're not even trying to connect. So, and I get why they wouldn't. A lot of those pitches were outside of the zone. He's not a pitcher. Um, I heard the same argument from some people this weekend at the stadium of why not just bring Alex Vesia in, but if you can save him and save further damage to his arm over the long haul because you know that they're going to continue to use the bullpen the way that they are, you bring him in and hope that he can close it out. They had a 13. Well, I think at the time that he came in, it was let's see here, it was 13-3. So they had a 10 run lead. They're hoping that he can close it out and they don't need to use Vesia. You can keep him. He gets a day of rest. He gets to rest again on Monday, and then he's good to go in Colorado, which we know is basically a hitter's ballpark. So who knows how much work they're going to get over the next few games.
Well, it is. It's definitely going to be a workout, especially at least one of those games is going to be a bullpen game, if not
Right.
more. But
And
okay,
you've got to save those guys in that respect. What you guys didn't get to see on the broadcast, if you're watching at home, is Kike actually came out of the bullpen. So one of our listeners, Sam, actually sent me a video of him trotting out. I was in the press box at the time, but we were underneath the stadium waiting to interview Shohei when he came out of the game. So when we were watching the broadcast on our phones, they didn't show that piece. But he trotted out, and then somebody asked the question to Dave Roberts in the scrum afterwards, and they were like, did you know that you were going to use Kike? And he had confirmed, like, yes, we were, but he was unaware that Kike was going to come trotting out of the bullpen to have his inning on the mound.
Okay, let's talk about Clayton Kershaw. He's 8 strikeouts away. You know what's funny? He's 3-0 on the season. Uh, Now, mind you, what cracks me up is like, oh, he's 3-0 on the season. There have been periods of Kershaw's career where the poor guy couldn't get a win because he wouldn't get any run support and stuff
Almost
like
like
that.
Yamamoto every time he pitches.
And while Kershaw has not looked dominant, he had a couple of good back-to-back starts. This last start, I think, was in the middle, but he is 8 strikeouts away. Amie, I think it's going to take him 2 more games. What do you think?
I think it's iffy because he got what, 7 strikeouts, I think, in one game, if I'm not mistaken. So it's
That
like,
was against the Cardinals, and that was his best. That's the
yeah.
best he's looked all year.
Well, and like, so do we get a Cardinals game or do we get a Nationals game where we only got, what, 4, I think, strikeouts at that point? 3? So I don't know. I'm planning on checking out the schedule and seeing when he's pitching because I like that's one of the milestones I'd like to be there for if they're at home, but we'll see. It's got to be 1 or 2. I mean, obviously he could prove us all wrong and he's just gonna take his time and do it over 3 or 4. But it I'm excited to see it.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? You look now, it seemed like it was a really close battle. The Giants were only 1 game back. And now you look, the Dodgers have a 5 game lead on the show pods. They have a 3.5 game lead on the Giants. And it seems like it just came out of nowhere. Or maybe that's what happens when you play teams within your division. You're able to go ahead and extend those leads. But
Mhm.
I'm starting to wonder every summer we see this, the Dodgers end up going on this ridiculous run, and they're the Dodgers. And Amie, they went through their tough stretch. They won. They went 17-12 in that 29 game stretch where they were playing against teams that were either great or good. They were very competitive. Now their schedule is gonna be soft. It's a lot softer than it was in the last 29. How realistic is it that maybe we're going to see this team now go on a run?
I see. This is where I watch a little differently than you. It's not that I don't care about that. I just there's no way to know. So that's where I just watch one game at a time because we've also seen some of those teams that maybe aren't doing so well. They play up to the Dodgers when they play them. So some of those games or those series where we're like, oh yeah, it's a lock, we're gonna win that, and then it doesn't come through, and then everybody has busted expectations. So I'm going through the rest of the year hoping that everybody stays healthy and just going kind of one game at a time.
Lowered
Perfect.
expectations.
I mean, in that respect, yes. Especially with the weird stuff that's going on around the league. We already talked about the umpires, but even in Sunday's game, the fact that we had 2 fan interferences, and you I think said this earlier in the season, like who thought we would be talking about position players pitching this much, but also fan interference. Like we had 2 in the game yesterday, and that first one, it felt like it took a long time for them to do that review and finally resume the game. Were you watching? Did you see any of those?
Yeah, I saw them. For me, it's part of the game. It's part of the game. You get so excited. Oh my God, you see the ball, and I think you just completely forget where you are. You just have a giant brain fart, and then afterwards, it's like you want to get away. That poor guy when Shohei hit the home run and he dropped the ball. I don't know if you saw the reaction of his kid. I mean,
Mhm.
that guy must feel horrible. I mean, I don't think he wanted to drop the ball. It's one of those things where, and I know that wasn't interference, but what I'm saying is I
It's
think like you like to say all the time. For me, this is clearly it's just
That's
baseball.
nothing.
It's just baseball. Yeah, it's nothing.
The fan, like just people getting their hands in the way of players trying to make that catch.
I again, I feel like you just get so caught up in like, oh, I want to catch this ball that you completely lose sight of where you are and your surroundings. That guy wasn't looking at the player. He didn't see where the player was. But then afterwards, what was the reaction like? Oh, what did I do? You know,
But that's having self-awareness in life in the moment as well, where it's just like, I mean, we none of us know what we would do in that moment, but like
right.
if you are leaving your seat to reach over the wall, your body didn't just do that on its own. Like those are still decisions that are made. So some people might lean over the wall, other people might lean away from it. We all have different self-awareness, but I think that's something to keep in mind if you are at a baseball game. Like if I'm going to choose to sit in the home run seats, I should probably think about, you know, what am I potentially going to do if put in this situation, and try to, at least if you think about something, you have a little bit better chance of reacting differently.
To steal one of your phrases, I'm going to give them grace.
Okay.
I'm going to give them grace. Anything else on the Nationales?
I don't think so. We did. Oh, Muncie hit a grand slam. I did want to call that out. It is the Dodgers' first grand slam of the season. So, kind of a big deal, since I had thought, they would have had one by now. But it was also his 200th career home run as a Dodger. So, kudos to him. And that was
That's
like
right.
amidst all the big home run scoring that happened on Sunday.
And it's been a while since we've seen Muncie hit a home run. So hopefully
He
he's a
did. I mean, he did a couple weeks ago. He hit like what was it? His actual 200th and 201st home run.
right.
And but this one's as a Dodger, and I was actually editing photos yesterday because obviously it was very busy at the stadium with Shohei pitching and all that stuff going on. So I just noticed the bases were full, and then all of a sudden you saw the entire stadium as one jump up on their feet and just start roaring. It was actually kind of cool just to be able to see, like, in surround sound, like everybody up on their feet just cheering the team on, obviously for the score, but also, just him having a moment.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to address on the show?
Um, I think I'm good. I have you been doing any of the All-Star voting?
No, no, I have not.
I
I think
have
the
not
last
either.
time I voted for an all star was back when I was a kid.
I
Uh,
I did do it last year. This year, I'm kind of I'm like, I have a lot on my plate. But Will Smith, Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez, and obviously Shohei Ohtani are leading on the National League side. So
and let me tell you this. This will give you a better example of when it was the last time I voted. It was when there were paper ballots, when you could go to the stadium and you would have to punch them, and have to be like, "Does anybody have a pencil? Does anybody have something that I could, use to fill out this ballot because I desperately needed to fill this ballot." And I was that kid who would use one ballot to fill out and vote for all the Dodgers, and then I would use another ballot with who I truly thought were deserving all-stars.
oh wow, look at you. Well, thank you for
And
your past service.
yeah, I think what happened is once they got rid of the paper ballots is when I stopped voting for the All Star game.
Gotcha. Well, that is all I have outside of anything else that you might have seen, or you know, I think they displayed everything pretty well after the weekend's press conferences and whatnot.
No, that's all for me.
Okay.
So now would be a very good time for those of you who are really only interested in listening to baseball and do not want to hear about anything else going on with the Los Angeles Dodgers, or for that fact, the city of Los Angeles. Now would probably be a good time to stop listening. For those of you who want or are interested, we are going to give some updates in terms of what's going on in the city of Los Angeles, in particular with the ice raids.
Mhm. We did get a couple. We had some comments between Twitter, between Instagram, people reaching out, also on YouTube, just of people just you know, I don't want to say agreeing because it sounds like we're trying to be right about something, but people who had a similar stance on what's going on in Los Angeles. So thank you everybody for your comments. Getting to read those, it meant a lot that, you know, we can at least, I guess, we reach out to you guys. And obviously this is a virtual show. We're talking to you after it gets posted, but that it means something.
But it's not necessarily just because they agree, Amy. For me, what I appreciated was,
Well, that's what I'm saying. Not because they agree like that. I was saying it's not just because they agree with us.
right. Like for me, they were really statements of support. I really appreciated the fact that some of you had said we are the only Dodgers podcast that is having this conversation. And look, other Dodger podcasts may have their reasons for why they don't want to address this topic. That's part of the reason why we put the trigger warning before we start discussing this topic. We understand that this is not for everybody. One of the most recent updates that we have here is that the Dodgers have announced that they were going to donate $1 million to. Do you have the actual phrasing, Amy? I want to make sure I'm fair to it and not summarizing it in a way that I could be degrading it, so to speak. I
So
want to say that it was they were donating $1 million to the immigrant community is the wording that they used.
I can read it.
Yes,
So
please
it's
do.
in partnership with the city of Los Angeles, the Dodgers have committed 1 million toward direct financial assistance for families of immigrants impacted by recent events in the region. Additional community efforts to be announced in the coming days.
Okay. Um, so look, and I know Amy, you've said this. I was like, well, they didn't have to give $1 million. I know there were a lot of Dodger fans who reached out to me and they weren't happy with the number. They were just like, really, Juan, only $1 million? It's like, look, they did what they did. For me, we are now going into week 3 of this, and it's not over. You're still seeing people being abducted in car washes. Like this, I mean, I just found out right now, like 2 blocks away from me, ICE was in my neighborhood. So this is not over. Unfortunately, you have people who aren't working. You have businesses. I don't know if anybody has seen the videos of Santee Alley. It's completely empty. So this is ongoing. So any support that these communities can receive, I think is helpful. Um, for me, yes, it's still disappointing that we are in week 3, and there is no. I mean, I don't know, Amy. Am I wrong? Does that sound like a statement of support? Because it sounds like to me what a lot of Dodger fans that I've spoken to, the way they interpreted that comment was, here's the money, leave us alone, stop complaining about us.
Uh, I mean, you have your viewpoint on it. There are certain reasons that I can't speak about a lot of this stuff online, so I'm just gonna abstain on that. Other than they did donate the $1 million, and they are gonna make, uh, you know, they're working to. I'm looking at the presser that came out. Support communities to aid youth and families with food insecurity, basic essentials, and mental health services.
Right. I guess my question was not necessarily what you thought about it, but do you read that statement as them? I guess they physically use the words support in there. So when people say, well, they haven't really made a statement saying that they support the immigrant community or they're against the raids. Yes, they haven't used those words that they are against the raids. And if that's what people want to hear, I'm letting you guys know it's 3 weeks in. You're not going to hear it. They're not going to say it. Now, some of the things that I've been hearing out there is this whole boycott the Dodgers thing. Look, Amy and I were at the game. I talked to a lot of Dodger fans that were there. It doesn't seem like those Dodger fans are interested in boycotting the Dodgers. Now
I
they
think
may
I think that's a little bit divisive though, like when you're saying like those Dodger fans or, like everybody has their reasons for doing what they're doing. I've talked to some people who have very, I don't want to call them high profile jobs, but very like what they do on a day-to-day basis is very stressful. And so the Dodgers are their respite. And it doesn't mean that they're supporting the front office and their decisions, but the Dodgers mean something to them in a different way. And I think this is just where we fan differently. How people decide to look at this is going to be a very personal decision for everybody. And just because people continue to show up at the games doesn't mean that they're supporting the front office or they're against the front office or they're fighting whatever. Everybody has an intensely personal reaction to this and what their decision is going to be going forward.
I think that's valid. I do think that's valid, and that's the reason why I say I don't see a boycott happening, because there are so many Dodger fans who this is an escape for them. That this brings them joy going to it. So everything that you just said is true. They may not like what's going on in their community, but at the same time they need this for an escape. So when people are saying boycott the Dodgers, don't spend your money there, my observation is I don't know how successful that would be, because there just still seems to be a big number of people, whether they agree with it or not, are still interested in going to Dodger games.
And I
They
think, and
still.
maybe it comes down to what are you trying to get out of it? Because some people are going to boycott the games, and that makes them feel better. And this is not a judgment. I realized it started to sound like that, but if you want to boycott the games for your own moral reasons, that may be reason enough for somebody. Like they're not trying to gather huge groups of people to have an empty stadium. For some people, they're boycotting because this is what feels good to them. So I think the boycott, whatever that idea means to other people, that could also be different. It could just be like person X over here is just, you know what, I'm just not going to go to games for a while, or you know what, I am going to go to games but I'm not buying merch. So I think it's going to look different to everybody. It's not just a black and white like boycott. The goal is to not have people in the stands. It is going to be just, you're going to see a different result based on who you talk to.
No, I agree with you. I think that's fair. The only other thing I wanted to add to this is I saw it again. So on Pride Night there was a woman that held up a sign that said no ice, and of course it went viral and all that stuff. Again, I cannot stress enough, she was not kicked out of the stadium. Dodger Stadium has a specific policy. You cannot have signs. You can't have any of that signage. They made her get rid of the sign, and then she was allowed to go back to join the rest of her group. I just saw this past weekend there were another group of fans that brought in signs saying "Ice, get out of LA." Now they were escorted. I don't know if they were escorted out. I'm just very curious now. And now that we're starting to see this, I don't know if copycat is the correct term here, but if we're going to see more of this type of action, because fans are disappointed. I think that's the big thing to point out there, Amy, is they are just disappointed. And I know a lot of you listeners have sent me those messages telling me, hey, Juan, here's the thing, man. It's just like, I support the Dodgers. I'm there for them. I take up for them. Why can't they do the same for our community? And I think that's where a lot of this is stemming from. So I am curious if we're going to see some of those, or if it's going to just fade out, like out of sight, out of mind. It's This is what we're living right now, is just a moment. We're in the moment right now. This moment may fade, and this may no longer be a story. But it is one of those things that, for me, it's very interesting to see how fans are going to react, because I keep hearing what you just mentioned earlier, Amy, and some of them don't know how to react to this. Some of them want to go to the games, but some of them just feel. I hear this a lot right now, and that is they feel icky. They just don't feel comfortable going. But who knows how long that's going to last for?
But that's like I keep coming back to, it's a personal decision, and it's not something set in stone. Like you might feel one way this week and feel another way another week. And I feel like with social media, a lot of this stuff has become performative. Not for everybody, but in some aspects. And it's like my reasons for whether I go to the stadium or not, those are my reasons. I don't have to share them with anybody. I mean, it's almost the same thing. I was just talking to somebody, like it's not on this level, obviously, but my brain likes to make connections. So it's when people peer pressure other people to throw a ball back if they catch a foul ball, especially if it comes from the other team. I don't want to do that. If I catch a foul ball, I'm going to keep it. It's my memory. I think that applies to some of this stuff where whatever your reason is and wherever you fall and wherever you decide to change your mind, it's your reason. You don't have to justify it to anybody. You don't have to tell anybody if you don't want to. But I feel like there's this expectation out there that people have to justify it and they have to have the right justification. And none of that matters. So, for anybody out there who is feeling conflicted or icky or disappointed, just know you get to make your own decision. You get to make your own choice, and you don't have to share that with anybody because it's nobody else's business unless you want to.
Yeah, so this may be the last time that we have this conversation only because the Dodgers have finally addressed it. And now at this point, what more can we add? It's like I said, it's one of those things. I hope everyone stays safe. I really hope that none of you are impacted by these tragic events and this
Mm-hmm.
cruelty, because it is just you see these videos, and when you see, especially when you see older people just getting physically beat down, and it just the word that comes to mind is just cruelty. Like, is any of this necessary? Like, we don't like, why is this being brought upon the city of Los Angeles? It feels like a siege. Look, Drank. Um, we mainly like to have fun on this show. It's not like we want to go out of the way to have these conversations, but like many of you who sent out these messages of support saying thank you for at least having the conversation, it's important, at least for me. I don't want to speak for Amie. It's important for me to be able to have these conversations to actually acknowledge what is happening out there, because what is happening out there is there, a lot of people are not only suffering because they don't know where loved ones are, but you have businesses, you have car washes that haven't opened now going into their third week. You have businesses, restaurants that are hurting financially. And that's why you may not agree with the fact that the Dodgers gave $1 million, but that $1 million is going to go to hopefully help somebody or some of these businesses. And right now, it's just, as many people have said, just look out for yourself and look out for your neighbors.
Mhm. Be good humans and be safe out there because that's, I mean, that's all we can do is be as safe as you can because these are these are scary times.
Absolutely. So that's going to do it for this episode. For those of you that have been listening on the audio portion of the show, please make sure you're subscribed to our podcast, rate us, write us a review, help spread the word about the show. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, hit that notification button, give us a thumbs up, leave us comments. We love engaging with you. And most importantly, make sure you're following us on social media, on X at BB Shangri LA, on Instagram, YouTube, and Blue Sky at Baseball Shangri LA. She is Amie Cuevas. I am Juan Ramirez. Nos despedimos con un beso. Amie, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye, people.